In this video today, I'm going to be reviewing the Lumix G9 strictly as a vlogging camera. I'm not going to be doing any photography with it. I'm not going to be doing any kind of cinematic footage with it. I do some slow motion footage because for some vloggers that like to use B-roll and slow on, that footage is in there as well. But this is strictly a review from a vlogger's standpoint. So there's a few things I forgot to put in this video, and I'm just basically going to be popping in and out of the video from this camera. I wanted to do a review on this camera. It's a Lumix G9, and to me, I think it's one of the better vlogging cameras, mainly because of all the features that it has. Everybody wants, full frame cameras, dual pixel autofocus, which I understand, but that also comes with a price. For me, as a vlogger, it doesn't make sense for me to get a big full frame camera. So far, there really hasn't been one made that does everything you want. There's not a lot of cameras that have as many features as the Lumix G9. I don't work for Lumix. I'm pretty new to Lumix. Since I started the vlog, that's all I've been using is Lumix G7. Over the years ago, I started with a Nikon, and then once they started bringing video to the DSLRs, I moved to Canon. Once I started vlogging, I realized that I'm going to be holding this camera out in front of me all the time, and I wanted to go with something lighter. So I went with specs only, and I chose the Lumix G7. But now they have a Lumix G9. I think it's over a year old now. When it comes to the specs and the features that it has, there's not many cameras out there that come close. Now Lumix makes the GH5 and the GH5s, which are better cameras if you're looking not only just to vlog, but to also make short films, scripted stuff where you need the high bit rate in order to color grade it properly and so on. But when it comes to vlogging, now don't get me wrong, you can color grade your footage when you vlog, but for the most part, most people just make the video and they put it up. To me, why spend an extra $1,000 to $1,500 on a camera if you're only going to use it to vlog? When it comes to features, you're talking 60 frames a second. If you want to do slow motion in HD, you're talking 180 frames a second. It has 2 card slots, and you can put 256 gigabyte cards in there. If you put two 256 gigabyte cards in the camera, I think you can get about 8 hours of footage, between 7 and 8 hours of footage running 60 frames per second. And then it's got a flip screen, it's got a microphone input, and it's got a headphone input. So say you're doing an interview or you're recording somebody else or making a little video, you can monitor the sound with the headphones. To me, that's a huge feature. Now, when you compare it to the Lumix G7, it is quite a bit heavier. G7 is ounces. Very light camera. Still has a lot of great features, but there's no slow-mo. There's no slow-mo. Oh, Jesus. That is like a flat ground. I slipped on it. You're talking 24 or 30 frames a second. HD, you're talking 60 frames a second. But you can buy the camera for $400. So the only reason I'm really comparing the G9 to the G7 is because I already own a G7, so it's what I know. And it's also a Micro Four Thirds. It's basically the predecessor. With the G7, the autofocus sucks. So the autofocus is so much better than the G7. So that makes it easier to vlog. I can just put the camera up, start talking, and I don't have to worry about trying to get the focus in and out and so on. There's no in-body stabilization on the G7. That's the biggest difference for me, is this camera has in-body as well as the optical stabilization in certain lenses that you have. There's a considerable difference in quality of the stabilization. Now with the G7, I use my gimbal a lot of times when I'm vlogging to study the footage. It's not near as shaky as the G7, so I don't feel like I need it near as bad. Like right now, I'm just walking, I'm literally just holding the camera. If you don't know what I'm doing, I'm looking for morel mushrooms. That's a different vlog up there in that corner. The Steadicam isn't too bad. It's not the best, but it's really not that bad at all. Another advantage too is I have the USB adapter. It's a USB charger, and you usually use it to plug in your phones. And it works on the camera. While I'm using the camera, the batteries actually went up 2 bars. To me, that's a huge thing too, because you don't have to worry about, obviously, you can buy batteries and so on. It makes it easier and not have to have a cord hooked up to your camera. But if you're in a situation where you just need some extra juice, you can literally have one of those battery packs, hook it up with the USB, and go on about your day with the video footage. I have one, it's a 10, I think it's a 10 mil amp. I had to look. I think it's a 10 mil amp. And then on top of it, it has a 2 amp output. So the USB port coming out is 2 amps. I have another charger. It is only a 1 amp and it would not power the camera. It would not even charge it with the camera off. You definitely have to have a minimum of a 2 amp output in order to get your camera charging. With this camera, you can record in 4K 60 frames a second, which allows you to do half speed slow motion pretty much, or 2.4 times speed slow motion, which is still nice. It's not super slow motion, and you know, it's not going to get the jiggly waves in your cheeks when you're bouncing, but it is nice to be able to slow down the footage from time to time. And when you're shooting at 60p, you can use the microphone. You have a slow motion setting in the camera, and you can do 48 frames a second, so basically be 2 times speed of a 24 frame shot, 60 frames a second, as well as 180 frames per second. The only disadvantage I have with the slow motion footage is the microphones don't work. It's probably how they got that high rate of 180 frames per second, because they don't have to process the audio with the video. Therefore, they're able to use more of the processing power to get more frames out of the slow motion in HD. I should have put on some shorts. So I lied. There was actually one more thing I didn't like about the slow motion in the camera, and that was that I couldn't change the exposure manually. I wasn't able to fix the aperture or fix the shutter. I'm not saying that the camera doesn't do that. I just couldn't figure it out in the short time that I had the camera. It has very, very good slow motion. I did notice that when you're shooting with the slow motion in the HD, if you have a wide angle lens, it's not near as detailed as a 4K. If you zoomed in and you're shooting slow motion, you know, really up close to flowers or bees or deer in the woods, it looks really, really good. One of the biggest reasons people seek the full frame camera is because with a full frame camera, you don't have to have such fast lenses to get a shallow depth of field. You know, if you're shooting with an f2 lens, it's the equivalent to an f4 on a full frame. So, you know, 1.7 is gonna be the equivalent to a 3.4, and I don't even think anybody makes 3.4, or if that's even a stop. This is a comparison of the Lumix 14 to 45 with a 3.5 aperture to 5.6, I believe. I'm comparing it with the 20mm that's 1.7, and you can see the big difference in depth of field. The advantages that it has is it has the headphone output, it has 2 card slots, the microphone input, the flip screen. The nice part about the flip screen is, I mean, you can flip it multiple directions. It has better autofocus than a GH5 and a GH5s, as well as the G7, the GX85. All in all, I really think that the Lumix G9 is probably one of the best vlogging cameras you can buy. Thanks for watching. Comment down below. I gotta go.